The stars looked different from the bridge of the Serenity's edge as Commander Zethkara watched the small blue planet grow larger on the main screen. His crystalline body reflected the soft lights of the control panels while his crew worked quietly around him. The Galactic Council had sent them to survey this system after detecting strange signals from the third planet. For over 2,000 years, the Council had mapped every corner of the galaxy, and this was supposed to be just another routine mission. Lieutenant Veltar approached from the science station with his datapad glowing softly in his six-fingered hands. The tall gray alien had worked with Zethkara for many years, and his excitement was clear in the way his large black eyes sparkled. The readings showed something unusual about this planet. There were electromagnetic waves coming from the surface that looked almost like primitive communication signals. Even more interesting were the metal objects orbiting the planet that seemed to be artificial satellites. Zethkara studied the data with growing curiosity. The Council had strict rules about first contact with developing species. They were supposed to observe from a safe distance and prepare careful introduction protocols that could take decades to implement. The galaxy had learned long ago that rushing contact with primitive species often led to cultural contamination or worse. Every member race had been slowly and carefully introduced to galactic civilization over many generations. The science officer Heldana called out from her station that she was detecting more unusual activity. Her blue skin shimmered as she worked at her controls with practiced ease. The electromagnetic signatures were getting stronger, and there seemed to be some kind of energy buildup happening near the planet's largest moon. The readings didn't match anything in their extensive databases of known technologies. Veltar suggested they move closer to get better sensor readings, but Zethkara hesitated. The Council's protocols were very clear about maintaining distance from primitive worlds. However, the energy readings were unlike anything they had seen before, and their scientific curiosity was stronger than their caution. He ordered the ship to move into a closer orbit while keeping their stealth systems active. Meanwhile, on the surface of the blue planet, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the control room of humanity's first warp drive facility. The excitement in the room was almost electric, as dozens of scientists and engineers prepared for their historic test. Dr. Lisa Hamilton checked her readings one more time, while Communications Officer Ryan Cooper monitored all frequencies for any interference. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez wiped sweat from his forehead as he made final adjustments to the experimental drive system. The warp drive had been humanity's dream for generations. They had worked for decades to understand the theoretical physics, and even longer to build a working prototype. The starship Liberty sat in orbit above Earth, loaded with humanity's best and brightest, ready to make the first jump to faster-than-light speed. Captain Morrison had volunteered for this dangerous mission, knowing that they might not survive the attempt. Lisa Hamilton announced that all systems were ready and the crew took their positions. The warp field generators began to hum with power as exotic matter flowed through conduits that had never been tested at full capacity. Ryan Cooper reported that all communication channels were clear and they had permission from Earth Control to begin the test. Tony Martinez crossed his fingers as he watched his instruments climb toward the critical threshold. The moment came faster than anyone expected. 1 second, the Liberty was floating peacefully in Earth orbit, and the next second, reality twisted around them like a broken mirror. Space folded in ways that human science barely understood as the ship pushed through the barrier between normal space and something else entirely. The crew felt their stomachs drop as the universe seemed to turn inside out around them. When the distortion cleared, Jake Morrison found himself staring at something impossible. Floating directly in front of them was a ship unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. It was smooth and organic-looking with flowing lines that seemed to shift and change as he watched. Strange lights pulsed along its hull in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. The alien vessel was easily 3 times the size of the Liberty, and clearly far more advanced than anything humans had built. On the bridge of the Serenity's edge, alarms began blaring as sensors detected the massive space-time distortion. Zeth Kara watched in shock as a primitive-looking spacecraft appeared, directly in front of them in a burst of twisted reality. The human ship was crude and angular with obvious weapon systems and thick armor plating. It looked like something built for war rather than exploration, and it had just demonstrated technology that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. Both crews stared at each other through their view screens in complete silence. The humans had achieved faster-than-light travel on their very first attempt, and had accidentally torn a hole in space-time that brought them face-to-face with an alien civilization. The aliens had been observing what they thought was a primitive species, only to discover that these humans had independently developed warp technology without any outside help. The galaxy was about to meet humanity, and nothing would ever be the same again. The silence stretched between the two ships like a held breath until Ryan Cooper broke it by activating the Liberty's communication systems. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he tried every frequency and protocol humanity had developed for space communication. Meanwhile, on the alien ship, Veltar was doing the same thing from his science station, while Zeth Kara watched the primitive human vessel with growing fascination. The breakthrough came when Lisa Hamilton suggested using mathematical concepts to establish basic communication. She transmitted a series of prime numbers followed by simple geometric patterns and basic physics equations. Within minutes, the alien ship responded with the same sequences but expanded them to show more complex mathematical relationships. Both crews realized they had found a universal language that any intelligent species would understand. Jake Morrison made the decision that would change history when he opened a direct video channel between the ships. The human crew gathered around. Their main screen, as the face of Commander Zeth Kara, appeared before them. His crystalline features sparkled in the light of his bridge, while his large, multifaceted eyes studied the humans with obvious curiosity. The sight of a real alien being left the human crew speechless for several long moments. Zeth Kara was equally amazed by what he saw. The humans looked remarkably similar to several species already in the Galactic Council, but there was something different about them. Their eyes held an intensity and alertness that he had rarely seen among the peaceful races of the galaxy. These beings looked like they were ready for anything and constantly scanning for threats or opportunities. Lieutenant Katie Brooks, who served as the Liberty's diplomatic officer, stepped forward to handle the first contact protocols. She had studied every theoretical framework for alien communication that humanity had developed, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of speaking with beings from another world. She began with simple concepts like greeting and friendship, while pointing to herself and then to the alien commander. The language barrier proved easier to overcome than anyone had expected. Both species had advanced computer systems that could analyze speech patterns and build translation matrices. Within an hour, they had established basic verbal communication, although many concepts still required careful explanation. Zeth Kara introduced his crew and explained that they were explorers from something called the Galactic Council. The human crew exchanged amazed glances when they learned that thousands of intelligent species already existed in the galaxy and had formed a peaceful alliance that spanned millions of star systems. Zeth Kara explained that his people had been watching Earth for some time and were preparing to make contact according to standard council protocols. He admitted that humanity's sudden appearance with working warp drive technology had surprised everyone. Katie Brooks arranged for a formal meeting between representatives of both crews to take place aboard the Liberty. The human ship's cargo bay was quickly converted into a meeting space with tables and chairs that could accommodate different body types. Tony Martinez worked with his engineering team to ensure the environmental systems could handle alien visitors, while Lisa Hamilton prepared scientific displays showing humanity's technological achievements. When Zeth Kara and 3 of his officers materialized in the cargo bay using their ship's teleportation system, The humans were impressed by the casual display of advanced technology. The alien commander towered over most of the human crew, but his manner was gentle and curious rather than threatening. His officers included Veltar the scientist, Heldana the cultural specialist, and Kolmet the engineer. The cultural exchange that followed fascinated both sides as they shared information about their respective civilizations. Lisa Hamilton enthusiastically presented humanity's scientific discoveries while showing holographic displays of human art, music, and literature. The aliens were intrigued by human creativity and the chaotic but effective way humans approached problem-solving. Tony Martinez demonstrated human engineering by fixing a minor malfunction in the alien shuttle using nothing but spare parts and innovative thinking. He literally hammered a piece of advanced technology back into working order while explaining his reasoning to the amazed alien engineer. Kolmet had never seen anyone repair sophisticated equipment with such crude but effective methods. The aliens shared their own achievements, including medical technology that could heal almost any injury, energy systems that drew power directly from stars, and transportation networks that connected every world in the galaxy. They showed recordings of their great cities with billions of beings from hundreds of different species living together in perfect harmony. However, the cultural exchange took an unexpected turn when Heldana mentioned that warfare had been eliminated from the galaxy over 10,000 years ago. The Galactic Council had achieved perfect peace through cooperation and mutual understanding. Every conflict was resolved through negotiation and compromise rather than violence. The human crew fell silent as they absorbed this information. Jake Morrison asked carefully about how the Council dealt with aggressive species or those who refused to negotiate. Zethkara explained that such beings were extremely rare and were usually isolated until they could be educated about peaceful coexistence. Ryan Cooper asked what would happen if the galaxy faced an external threat that could not be reasoned with. The alien crew looked confused by the question, since they had never encountered anything that diplomacy and superior technology could not handle. The concept of an enemy that would rather fight than talk was almost incomprehensible to beings who had lived in peace for millennia. Katie Brooks realized that while the galaxy had achieved something wonderful by eliminating war, they had also lost something that might prove important. Humanity had spent its entire existence competing and fighting for survival. Every human achievement had come through struggle against hostile environments, dangerous predators, and other humans who wanted the same limited resources. The meeting continued for hours as both sides tried to understand how such different approaches to existence had produced intelligent spacefaring species. The aliens were amazed by human adaptability and creative problem-solving, while the humans were impressed by galactic cooperation and technological advancement. As the day ended, both crews knew they had witnessed something historic. Humanity was about to join a galactic civilization that was vast beyond imagination, but the galaxy was also about to discover what 10,000 years of peace had cost them. The universe was a dangerous place, and sometimes the best intentions were not enough to survive what lurked in the darkness between the stars. The peaceful atmosphere aboard both ships changed dramatically when emergency signals began flooding the Galactic Council communication networks. Zethkara's expression shifted from curiosity to alarm as his crew received priority messages from Council headquarters. The crystalline commander's usual calm demeanor cracked as he read reports that seemed impossible to believe. Veltar announced that 3 entire star systems in the Outer Rim had gone silent in the past 48 hours. The last transmissions from those regions spoke of massive ships appearing from deep space without warning. The attackers had overwhelmed planetary defenses in minutes and consumed everything in their path, including the stars themselves. Admiral Kethmar arrived within hours aboard the massive Council flagship Eternal Harmony. The ancient being had served the galaxy for over 800 years and had never seen anything like the crisis unfolding at the edge of known space. His weathered features showed deep concern as he materialized aboard the Serenity's Edge to brief Zeth Kara and meet the human representatives. The Admiral's report painted a terrifying picture of an enemy that had returned from the distant past. The Devourers were synthetic beings that had consumed entire sectors of the galaxy millions of years ago before mysteriously vanishing into deep space. Ancient records described them as machines of pure destruction that converted matter and energy into more of themselves in an endless cycle of growth and consumption. Jake Morrison and his crew listened to the briefing with growing understanding of just how serious the situation had become. The Admiral explained that the Galactic Council's defensive fleets were designed for peacekeeping operations and minor conflicts between member species. They had sophisticated sensors and communication systems, but their weapons were primarily non-lethal tools meant to disable rather than destroy. Lisa Hamilton asked pointed questions about the Council's military capabilities, and the answers revealed a civilization that had optimized itself for peace at the cost of defensive strength. The galactic races had spent 10,000 years developing art, science, and philosophy while allowing their military knowledge to atrophy into obsolescence. The Devourers had returned with technology far beyond anything the peaceful Council races possessed. Their ships were massive constructs that could drain the energy from entire star systems and convert planets into raw materials for building more ships. They showed no interest in communication or negotiation and seemed driven by nothing more than an insatiable hunger for resources. Admiral Kethmar admitted that the Council's first attempts to engage the Devourers had been disasters. Entire fleets had been destroyed or converted to serve the enemy within hours of making contact. The synthetic beings adapted to every tactic the Council forces tried and turned their own technology against them with ruthless efficiency. The human crew realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization that had achieved perfect peace was facing an enemy that existed only to consume and destroy. The Council races had forgotten how to think strategically about warfare, and their peaceful conditioning made them hesitant to use the kind of decisive action that might be necessary for survival. Danny Rodriguez, who served as the Liberty's tactical officer, began asking detailed questions about Devourer attack patterns and defensive strategies. His analysis revealed fundamental flaws in how the Council forces were approaching the conflict. They were treating it like a peacekeeping mission rather than a war for survival, and their tactical thinking was centuries out of date. The Admiral was shocked when Danny pointed out several obvious strategic errors in the Council's defensive deployment. The human officer suggested concentrating forces at key bottleneck points rather than spreading them evenly across threatened systems. He recommended asymmetric warfare tactics that would force the Devourers to fight on multiple fronts while protecting critical infrastructure. Tony Martinez studied the technical specifications of Council ships and immediately saw ways to modify them for more effective combat operations. The alien vessels were marvels of peaceful engineering, but they lacked the redundant systems and damage control capabilities that were essential for surviving battle conditions. He suggested modifications that would seem crude to galactic engineers, but would dramatically improve combat effectiveness. The cultural exchange had suddenly become a military consultation as the human crew found themselves explaining concepts that the galactic races had forgotten. Jake Morrison talked about the psychology of warfare and the importance of maintaining morale under impossible odds. Katie Brooks discussed the need for clear command structures and decisive leadership during crisis situations. Zeth Kara watched, the humans with growing amazement as they effortlessly analyzed the tactical situation and proposed solutions that his own military experts had not considered. These beings instinctively understood concepts like acceptable losses, strategic sacrifice, and the willingness to take calculated risks for potential victory. The most disturbing revelation came when Lisa Hamilton asked about the Council's contingency plans for total warfare. Admiral Kethmar looked confused by the question until she explained the human concept of mobilizing an entire civilization's resources for conflict. The idea of converting peaceful infrastructure to military production was completely alien to races that had not fought a real war in millennia. Ryan Cooper suggested establishing secure communication networks that could coordinate resistance efforts even if the main council systems were compromised. His recommendations were based on human military doctrine that assumed any conflict would involve attempts to disrupt enemy communications and logistics. As the briefing continued, it became clear that humanity possessed something the galaxy desperately needed. 10,000 years of peace had created a civilization of incredible scientific and cultural achievement, but it had also produced beings who could not think like warriors when their survival depended on it. The Devourers were advancing toward the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. Conservative estimates suggested they would reach the major population centers within months. The Council's remaining fleets were retreating in confusion, while billions of peaceful beings faced extinction at the hands of an enemy that existed only to consume. The galaxy had spent eons perfecting the art of peace, but had forgotten the science of war. Humanity had never known true peace, and had spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds. The meeting between human and galactic civilizations was no longer just first contact, but potentially the key to survival for every intelligent species in the galaxy. The Liberty transformed into an unlikely military academy as Admiral Kethmar requested that the human crew teach galactic officers the forgotten arts of warfare. Jake Morrison found himself addressing hundreds of alien commanders through holographic conferences while his officers worked around the clock to compress millennia of human military evolution into crash courses for desperate civilizations. Commander Janet Walsh took charge of strategic operations training and immediately discovered how difficult it would be to teach warfare to beings who had never experienced real conflict. When she presented a tactical scenario where enemy forces outnumbered friendly units 3-1, the alien officers consistently looked for ways to negotiate or withdraw rather than seeking victory through superior strategy. The concept of acceptable losses proved almost impossible for the galactic races to understand. Janet explained that sometimes soldiers had to be sacrificed to save larger numbers of civilians or to achieve strategic objectives, but the alien commanders recoiled from such thinking. Their peaceful conditioning made them seek solutions where everyone survived, rather than focusing on overall mission success. Danny Rodriguez worked with fleet commanders to redesign their battle formations and discovered that council ships were deployed like parade formations rather than combat units. The aliens had arranged their vessels for maximum visual impact and communication efficiency rather than tactical advantage. He spent days teaching basic concepts like overlapping fields of fire and mutual support between vessels. The most challenging aspect was teaching the psychology of command during combat situations. The galactic officers were trained to build consensus and seek input from all crew members before making decisions. Danny had to explain that battle happened too quickly for committee decisions and that commanders needed to make instant choices based on incomplete information. Dr. Ben Torres found himself working with alien medical staff to understand the physiological and psychological differences between humans and other galactic species. The aliens were amazed to discover that humans could function effectively under extreme stress levels that would incapacitate most other races. Human ability to maintain rational thinking during chaos was unprecedented in galactic experience. The medical analysis revealed that humanity had evolved under constant survival pressure that produced unique adaptive capabilities. While other species had developed intelligence in peaceful environments, humans had learned to think creatively while facing immediate threats to their existence. This gave them an ability to innovate and improvise that other races found almost magical. Tony Martinez established engineering workshops where he taught alien technicians how to field modify their sophisticated equipment for combat effectiveness. The galactic engineers were horrified when he suggested removing safety systems and pushing equipment beyond design specifications, but they learned that sometimes crude solutions were more reliable than elegant ones. The aliens struggled with human concepts like redundancy and fault tolerance. Their technology was beautifully efficient with every component perfectly optimized for its intended function. Tony had to explain that battlefield conditions required systems that could keep working even when damaged or used in ways the designers never intended. Lisa Hamilton worked with council scientists to understand devourer technology and develop countermeasures. She discovered that the synthetic beings had achieved near-perfect efficiency in their design, which made them incredibly powerful, but also potentially vulnerable. Human experience with imperfect technology suggested ways to exploit the devourer's reliance on optimization. The breakthrough came when Lisa realized that the devourer's greatest strength was also their weakness. Their technology was so perfectly integrated that disrupting any part of their systems could cause cascading failures throughout their entire network. She proposed using chaotic interference patterns that would be impossible for the synthetic beings to predict or counter. Katie Brooks found herself teaching diplomacy in reverse as she helped alien leaders understand how to coordinate military operations between species that had vastly different approaches to command and control. The Council's consensus-based decision-making was too slow for military operations, but their peaceful nature made them resist more authoritarian command structures. The training sessions revealed fundamental differences in how humans and aliens approached problem-solving. When presented with an impossible situation, the galactic races looked for ways to change the parameters or find alternative solutions. Humans immediately began looking for ways to achieve victory despite the impossible odds. Jake Morrison worked directly with Admiral Kethmar to explain the concept of total war and how entire civilizations could be mobilized for conflict. The Admiral was disturbed by the idea of converting peaceful infrastructure to military production, but he began to understand that survival might require such extreme measures. The human captain explained that warfare was not just about battles between military forces, but about the ability to maintain industrial production, supply lines, and civilian morale under constant threat. The Council had never considered that their beautiful cities and peaceful populations could become targets in a conflict that threatened the existence of all intelligent life. Ryan Cooper established new communication protocols that could maintain coordination between scattered forces even when primary networks were compromised. His designs were based on human military doctrine that assumed enemies would target command and control systems as a primary strategy. As the training continued, both sides learned valuable lessons. The humans discovered that galactic technology was far more capable than they had imagined when properly applied to military purposes. The aliens learned that their peaceful achievements were worth fighting for, and that sometimes violence was the only way to preserve what they had built. The first mixed human-alien combat units began training together as species that had never worked alongside warriors, learned to coordinate with beings who had never known peace. The cultural exchange that had begun as scientific curiosity became a desperate partnership between civilizations that needed each other to survive. Reports from the front lines showed that some Council fleets were beginning to achieve victories, using human tactical doctrines, but progress was slow, and the Devourers continued their relentless advance toward the galactic core. Time was running out for both human and alien civilizations, as an enemy that knew only consumption moved closer to the heart of galactic civilization. The galaxy was learning to fight, but the question remained whether they could learn quickly enough to survive what was coming for them all. The Devourers reached the Nexus station 3 weeks ahead of all projected timelines, and their massive fleet appeared at the edge of the system like a dark storm made of metal and hunger. The station served as the primary communication hub for the entire Galactic Council, and its loss would cut coordination between the remaining free systems, making organized resistance almost impossible. Admiral Kethmar commanded the largest council fleet ever assembled, but even with human tactical advisors, the odds were overwhelming. The Devourer fleet consisted of hundreds of massive ships, each one capable of consuming entire planets and converting the matter into more vessels. Intelligence reports suggested they had grown stronger by absorbing the resources of every system they had conquered. Jake Morrison studied the tactical display and realized that conventional defense was impossible. The station could not be evacuated in time, and the Council fleet was outnumbered by factors that made victory through normal combat operations unlikely. He proposed something that horrified the galactic commanders, but offered the only realistic chance of success. The Liberty would lead a direct assault on the Devourer command ships, while the Council fleets engaged the main enemy force. It was a suicide mission designed to disrupt the synthetic beings' coordination long enough for civilian evacuation and strategic withdrawal. The human crew volunteered without hesitation, despite knowing they probably would not survive. Lisa Hamilton worked frantically with alien scientists to develop weapons that could exploit the Devourer's technological vulnerabilities. They created chaotic interference generators that would disrupt the perfect integration between Devourer systems. The weapons were crude by galactic standards, but their unpredictable patterns might confuse synthetic beings that relied on logical optimization. Tony Martinez supervised field modifications to both human and alien vessels that pushed their systems far beyond safe operating parameters. He removed safety limits and installed human-designed redundancies that would keep ships fighting even when they should have been disabled. The modifications violated every principle of safe engineering, but they dramatically increased combat effectiveness. The battle began when the Devourer fleet detected the Council forces and moved to engage with the mechanical precision that had made them unstoppable. Their ships formed perfect geometric patterns that maximized their firepower while minimizing vulnerability to counterattack. It was beautiful and terrifying to watch artificial intelligence wage war with mathematical perfection. Danny Rodriguez coordinated the opening phases of the battle as Council fleets implemented human tactical doctrines for the first time in actual combat. Instead of the neat formations they had trained with for millennia, the alien ships used chaotic attack patterns that confused the Devourer targeting systems. The synthetic beings struggled to predict movements that followed no logical pattern. The Liberty led a small force of modified ships directly toward the heart of the Devourer fleet, while larger Council vessels engaged the enemy perimeter. Jake Morrison pushed his ship through defensive fire that should have vaporized them instantly, but somehow they survived through a combination of luck, skill, and the kind of desperate courage that only humans seem to possess. Lieutenant Kevin. Gray coordinated fighter squadrons using human combat maneuvers adapted for alien craft. The small vessels swarmed around massive Devourer ships like angry insects attacking giants. Their weapons were insignificant against the enemy's armor, but their unpredictable movements created chaos in the synthetic beings' defensive calculations. Ryan. Cooper maintained communications between scattered human and alien forces as battle damage disrupted normal command networks. His jury-rigged systems kept information flowing even when primary communications arrays were destroyed. The improvised networks were inefficient, but they worked when more sophisticated systems failed completely. The tide of battle shifted when Lisa Hamilton's chaos generators began affecting Devourer ship systems in unexpected ways. The synthetic beings had optimized their technology for perfect efficiency, but this made them vulnerable to truly random interference. Devourer ships began experiencing cascading failures as their integrated systems struggled to compensate for chaotic inputs. The Liberty penetrated deep into the enemy formation before taking critical damage that should have destroyed them immediately. Tony Martinez kept the ship fighting by literally welding damaged systems back together while the battle raged around them. His repairs were ugly and temporary, but they allowed the crew to continue their mission when any rational analysis suggested they should already be dead. Dr. Ben Torres worked in the medical bay treating casualties with alien physiology he barely understood, while the ship shook from repeated impacts. The human medical officer discovered that many galactic species were more fragile than humans, but they were also more resilient in unexpected ways. He learned to treat injuries that human medicine had never encountered. The climactic moment came when the Liberty reached the Devourer command cluster and Jake Morrison ordered the activation of every chaos generator simultaneously. The massive energy discharge overloaded the synthetic beings' central coordination systems and created a feedback loop that spread throughout their entire fleet network. For the first time since their return, the Devourers experienced something they could not calculate or predict. Their perfect formations dissolved into confusion as individual ships lost connection with the collective intelligence that guided them. Some vessels stopped fighting entirely, while others began attacking their own forces in electronic panic. Katie. Brooks coordinated the evacuation of Nexus Station while the battle raged around them. Millions of civilian beings from dozens of species were transported to safety using human logistics principles that prioritized speed over comfort. The evacuation succeeded because human planners were willing to accept risks that alien administrators would have considered unacceptable. The battle's outcome remained uncertain even as Devourer resistance began to collapse. Their ships were individually more powerful than anything the Council possessed, but they had lost the coordination that made them unstoppable. Individual alien crews began achieving victories using human tactics adapted to their specific species and equipment. The Liberty limped away from the battle with massive damage but still functional thanks to Tony Martinez's impossible repairs, and the crew's refusal to give up when any logical analysis suggested they should surrender. They had accomplished their mission by proving that the Devourers could be defeated, but the cost had been enormous for both human and alien forces. As the enemy fleet retreated in confusion, the survivors realized they had witnessed something unprecedented. The synthetic beings that had consumed entire sectors of the galaxy had been stopped by the introduction of chaos into their perfect order. The galaxy's peaceful civilizations had learned to fight, but more importantly, they had learned that sometimes survival required embracing the impossible and refusing to accept logical limitations on what could be achieved through desperate courage and innovative thinking. 6 months after the Battle of Nexus Station, the galaxy looked very different than it had before humanity's arrival. The Devourers had been driven back to the edge of known space, and their perfect coordination had never fully recovered from the chaos weapons developed by human and alien scientists working together. More importantly, the galactic civilization itself had fundamentally changed in ways that surprised everyone. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, looking out at the first integrated human-alien colony as it took shape. In the space around them, ships from dozens of species worked alongside human vessels in a construction project that would have been impossible under the old Council protocols. The new station combined human adaptability with alien precision to create something neither species could have built alone. The captain now served as humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council, but his real work involved overseeing the cultural integration that was transforming both human and alien societies. The careful protocols that had once governed contact between species had been replaced by a more chaotic but ultimately more effective approach to cooperation. Lisa Hamilton led the new Galactic Innovation Initiative from laboratories that buzzed with the kind of creative energy the galaxy had not seen in millennia. Human researchers worked alongside alien scientists in projects that combined human intuition with galactic knowledge to achieve breakthroughs that neither side could have imagined. The controlled chaos of human research methods had revolutionized how the galaxy approached scientific discovery. The most successful projects came from teams that learned to balance human creativity with alien methodical approaches. Dr. Hamilton's group had developed new technologies by encouraging researchers to pursue ideas that seemed impossible rather than limiting themselves to logical extensions of existing knowledge. The results were innovations that advanced galactic science by centuries in just a few months. Tony Martinez had established the cross-species engineering exchange in a facility that looked more like a workshop than a research center. Alien engineers learned human principles of field modification and adaptive design while humans studied the elegant efficiency of galactic technology. The combination produced equipment that was both sophisticated and reliable under extreme conditions. The engineering teams had discovered that human improvisation combined with alien precision created solutions that were superior to either approach, used alone. They developed ships that could be modified in the field for different missions while maintaining the reliability and performance that galactic technology was famous for. The new designs revolutionized how the galaxy thought about engineering and manufacturing. Danny Rodriguez commanded the first integrated combat unit that included warriors from 17 different species. The mixed crews had learned to combine human tactical flexibility with the specialized abilities of various alien races. Some species excelled at coordination and communication, while others provided enhanced sensors or unique weapons capabilities. The military integration had been surprisingly successful because humans provided the strategic thinking while aliens contributed technological capabilities that enhanced human tactics. The combined forces were more effective than either human or alien units operating separately. They had developed new doctrines that took advantage of each species' strengths while compensating for their weaknesses. Ryan Cooper managed communication, networks that connected human and alien settlements across the galaxy using hybrid technologies that combined the reliability of galactic systems with the adaptability of human designs. The new networks could maintain coordination even when individual nodes were damaged or destroyed, making the galaxy more resilient against future threats. Katie Brooks worked with cultural exchange programs that were transforming how different species interacted with each other. The rigid protocols that had once governed interspecies contact had been replaced by more flexible approaches that encouraged innovation and cultural mixing. The results were artistic and philosophical movements that incorporated ideas from dozens of different civilizations. The changes went far beyond military cooperation as alien societies began adopting human concepts of individual creativity and competitive improvement. Art became more expressive and diverse as species that had focused on collective harmony learned to value personal innovation. Scientific research accelerated as researchers began embracing controlled experimentation rather than purely theoretical approaches. Economic systems evolved to incorporate human concepts of entrepreneurship and risk-taking alongside traditional galactic cooperation. New businesses emerged that combined human adaptability with alien resources to create products and services that neither society could have developed independently. The galaxy's economy became more dynamic and innovative than it had been in thousands of years. Educational systems transformed as alien institutions learned human methods of encouraging creative thinking and problem-solving. Students were taught to question established knowledge and pursue unconventional solutions rather than simply memorizing existing information. The changes produced a generation of thinkers who combined galactic knowledge with human innovation. The political structure of the Galactic Council evolved to accommodate species that approached governance differently than the traditional consensus-based model. Human concepts of representative democracy and individual rights were integrated with alien traditions of collective decision-making to create hybrid systems that were more responsive to changing circumstances. Admiral Kethmar commanded the new Galactic Defense Force that combined traditional council peacekeeping with human military doctrine. The hybrid organization was prepared for both peaceful conflict resolution and military action when diplomacy failed. They maintained the galaxy's commitment to peace while acknowledging that some threats could only be met with force. As Jake Morrison watched the construction work outside Harmony Station, he reflected on how much had changed since that first accidental meeting between human and alien civilizations. The galaxy had not just gained a new member species, but had rediscovered the value of diversity, competition, and the willingness to embrace chaos as a source of innovation and strength. The first joint exploration fleet departed for unknown regions. beyond the galactic rim with mixed crews aboard ships that represented the best of both human and alien design philosophy. Their mission was to explore new worlds and search for other civilizations that might benefit from the galaxy's hard-won wisdom about the balance between order and chaos. The day the galaxy met humanity had changed everything for both civilizations. Humans had found their place among the stars, while the galaxy had learned that peace and progress required not just cooperation, but also the courage to embrace the unknown and the willingness to fight for what they had built together. The universe was vast and dangerous, but it was also full of possibilities that could only be achieved by beings who refused to accept that anything was truly impossible.